and again, rebuild for the benefit of each and every one of us. So with that, sir, I'd like to go ahead and yield the call back to you.
Outstanding. How do you hear me?
Clearly, sir.
We do understand that there are agencies that are trying to prevent us from being able to connect with the many people of the universe. However, as I begin to do these calls, I haven't done it in quite some time. I want to say to those agencies, beware, because they must understand to disconnect us or to try and prevent us from being able to bring these calls, or it will be heavily, I would say, based upon the nations, it will be heavily revealed in a time whereby right now we're in a moment where the wars of the world have already begun. There's no way to stop them. And for all of the outside interference that's going on right now, it will be held accountable for by all of the nations. Not one nation now is willing to allow any interference to occur, especially when we're talking about human rights, sovereignty of the people, the rule of law, being transparent. All these things now are in 198 sovereign nations. Sovereignty is going to be what everyone has to focus on. We have already told everyone in our would-be everyday recommendations, when you're doing these would-be complaints, of case complaints, you must remember that you are a human being. You're on this planet as a would-be person of interest. And thereby, you must make sure that all of your complaints are based upon human rights violations. Because human rights violations carry a non-statute of limitation. And those that will commit this crime will be held accountable, even if they have to be brought from their graves, sat on nothing more than those witness stands, in which they themselves will be nothing more than bones draped in clothes. And after they're found guilty, they would then be carried out into the streets and shattered into many pieces, as if though they were nothing more than short glass. They must understand that these cases are real. Human rights violation, again, I say, has a non-statute limitation, and those that are violating it will be held accountable. All of the nations are going to make sure that they work together to bring those that have violated the human rights to justice. Now, I know that I was being blocked for a moment of time now. And again, I say this is a verbal affidavit. This affidavit is going out from the Universal World Court, the only true court of this universe, that any violation, any would-be one that's trying to prohibit it, anything that's going on right now is going to be held accountable, not only by the court laws, but by the tribunal trials. And they're going to be treated as if though they were soldiers. Because right now they're violating wars around the world that must be brought to peace. Those wars have to be brought to a position and a point where they all will study peace and not study war anymore. And the violators right now are those who are financially benefiting off the back of these wars. And they will be held accountable. And every nation is in agreement with this. We don't have no one nation. And for those individuals that have the ability to be able to set at those would-be so-called terminals, whereby you're able to pull the plug on a telephone line, you must understand that you are violating the laws of this land, the laws of mankind, and you're going to be held accountable. And even those that are sitting there beside you that take the cords for hands and plug those lines back in are saying to you, not going to happen, not on this watch, not on any other watch. And then you're wondering and you're recognizing the fact that you're having to fight inside the house, because you are a violator of the rights of mankind, and you're going to be held accountable. Now, being that you're hearing the fact that the United States of America doesn't truly carry any would-be so-called papers of accountability of where it came from, how it came to be, how it got its independence, where it got its independence from, you know, when reading the would-be so-called Declaration of Independence back to what we know to be its would-be the founding fathers, you find them appealing to someone that they call a higher power. But they never state any would-be identification of this higher power. They don't say if they were appealing to Jesus the Christ. They don't say if they were appealing to any God whatsoever. They never said if they were appealing to the gray men or the green men of the north or the south, because there was no higher power for them to be able to appeal to. Thereby, them claiming that they accepted or they received this so-called blessing of some so-called judiciary law system that gave them some right by some constitutional law to be able to be in existence is a total lie and a hoax. And all the nations are aware of that right now. Now, tonight, for your would-be information, this is what I was going to bring in a manner whereby I wanted to take my time so America would understand that the people of this land is not being attacked. So for those of the people who are finding themselves right now that you want to be against Donald Trump or you want to be against Biden, the factor of this would-be fact remains that it has nothing to do with those two men. It has everything to do with a system whereby those two men, too, have been objected to or subjected to. And those men themselves had no clue where the system came from. They don't they were not there in the building of that system. They too were just those that were carrying out orders. They too were those that took the obligation. They swore to something that they were going to do, but they didn't understand the ins, the outs. They didn't understand what this swearing in was all about. I'm sure that had Joe Biden, even truly himself, understood that he was swearing to taking over to a nation that didn't exist, or he was about to infringe on some human rights of some people, that had nothing to do with his would-be so-called family, his relatives, his ancient parents, or whatever he may deem them to be. None of the people in the land that now he is supposedly governing has anything to do with his past criminal background of his family. No one had anything to do with that. No one knew anything about Ireland. No one cared anything about if Ireland had criminals or not, if they had prisoners or not. No one cared. Not in this land, because they wasn't accountable in this land. All of those men that have gone through the White House, that are from different would-be origins of this world, whereby some were from England, some were from Germany, some of them were from far-off places for Scandinavia, some of them were from places that were just right around in what they deemed to be America by birth, but at the same time, that's not where their ancestors were from. And their ancestors, the majority of them were known to be nothing more than criminals. And they were placed in a land whereby they became, yes, prisoners. And as it has been written out, based upon the truth that has come out, they themselves were nothing more than mutineers or mutinies that did nothing more than take over a nation in order that they might be able to benefit from it, but it was an illegal and illegal takeover. It was an invasion that was not just, it was an unjust invasion that took place. And even though those wars went on to be known as the Spanish-American War, they were known as the American Civil War. They were known to be the war of the North and South. They were known to be the wars that even expanded from here to other nations, such as the Cold War, and those wars in which would have been considered to be nothing more than the Iraqi War or the Vietnam War. But all these wars had nothing to do with the natives of this land. The natives of this land never, ever wrote one declaration of war against any nation whatsoever. No native in this land ever wrote a declaration of war against those that might be classified now as Americans. No true native of this land ever wrote a declaration of war against any other nation. There's truth. We must face the truth. For this nation had 5 unincorporated nations, and neither one of those nations ever wrote a declaration of war against the United States or any other would-be nation. Never did they write a declaration of war. Why? Because they wasn't at war with anyone. They was always at peace with everyone. They conducted themselves in a peaceful manner, in a respectful manner, in a moral manner. They never one time declared war against anyone that they might have classified to be their enemy, because they never classified anyone as an enemy. But America, again, invaded those nations. Those peaceful nations were invaded by the United States of America and destroyed. As I was speaking earlier about the ICWA, known as nothing more than an Indian Child Welfare Act, to save those young Indian children from the true oppressors and being placed in a Child Welfare Act or a Child Welfare system, whereby they were being carried out of their families, they were being carried out of their customs, they were being carried out of their language, carried out of their schools, carried out of their homes, placed inside of Anglo-Saxon houses, placed inside of Anglo-Saxon families, where they had to learn a new way of life, a new language. They had to even start using the word mama and daddy, father and mother, words in which they did not truly understand. Because to be able to speak their own native tongue, those words in which they used for mother and father had a much more endearment to them. The food in which they ate at their mother's table, their father's tables, had much more of a greater appetite for them, because they knew that at the end of the night, they were going to be tucked inside of their beds by their real parents. Those parents in which America executed. Those parents in which America done nothing more than carried their fathers to the gallows and hung them for no reason whatsoever, and classified it as conquering them or civilizing them, when it was nothing more than an illegal invasion of a nation that never wrote one declaration of war against any nation whatsoever. This passing of this Indian Child Welfare Act that took place in 1978 is really one that which one might look at to say it was nothing more than a cover-up. A cover-up whereby knowing that some of these acts of destroying of the would-be so-called Native Americans or the Indians with up in the homes happened in the 1800s. That's a gross disrespect to wait until 1978 before you even give them the ability to be able to at least place children, Indian children, inside of families that would have not even knew anything about their customs or their parents. I know I'm not trying to make a case now for those Native Americans because the Supreme Court has already ruled 7-2. They have ruled, the court upheld the constitutionality of the Indian Child Welfare Act, rejecting a challenge from the University of Michigan law professor Matthew Fletcher, which describes to a high country news as a broadside that he classifies to be nothing more than him trying to destroy the federal Indian law, knowing that these laws was nothing more than laws that were supposed to be to protect the Indians, to protect the Native Americans. And even though they were trying to prevent them from living out their sovereignty right on the land whereby it has always been sovereignty for them. Judge Kavanaugh, in an open door for a potential future, they said he opens a new door. Legal challenges that ties to an equal protection issue, and it will petition those who will claim that Native people should be treated as racial classes and not citizens of sovereign nations. In other words, they want to place everyone that they come in contact with as nothing more than another would-be race or nationality, or another race within some so-called United States of America, knowing that America only exists because of the 5 unincorporated nations of sovereignty of those that are classified to be Native Americans. We believe that even if Judge Kavanaugh looked into it, he will realize that his family is one of those that violated the sovereignty of this land to begin with. Even though we know that Judge Neil Gorsuch, he feels the same way. But they didn't all outright say that it was a group of racial people that should be placed out of a sovereignty of the people, because they understand the sovereignty has its place in everyone, whether they be classified as Native American, whether they be classified as Chinese American, whether they be classified as African American, whether they be classified as some Japanese American or some Korean American. Every individual still has the right to breath of life, and that right is nothing more than the sovereignty right of the individuals. Native people, they said, should be treated as a racial class and not citizens of sovereign nations. But they're only saying that because they know sovereignty is greater than any race that could be placed upon the planet. Because, again, sovereignty is the right to the breath of life. And they would want to hold the right to the breath of life and give you nothing more than a right to some racial would-be group of people, that they would give them laws and rules and regulations and principles that they would have to follow that has nothing to do with their customary way of life. This is a basic question to be open with, but it feels like they say that it could be called, given the amount of anxiety and tension expressed throughout the Indian country leading up to this decision, how significant is the court's decision to uphold the ICWA as a federal law? I say it has to be looked at with great respect, because at least the court recognizes sovereignty. And at least the court understands that even in the history of America, the history of America has already given them the facts that the only reason America claims its own existence is through the 5 unincorporated nations that are classified as sovereign nations. And those nations were here way before any United States of America would have ever existed. Those nations, many of them have been here for over 17,000 years. And America is only claiming some so-called would be 250 years of existence. Some of those nations have been here for more than 8 millenniums. And America is only claiming 250 years of its existence and wanting to do nothing more than find some way of rewriting the laws of the land to be suitable toward what they're talking about in some so-called Supreme Court or some district court or some state court based upon some so-called would-be title of race rather than the title of sovereignty. Native families, in particular, those within their own tribes, have been trying to do nothing more than keep their children within their tribes. For the tribes are beginning to thin out. They're becoming smaller by the day. Not through just them deciding to break up or everyone wants to go out and join the new hip-hop world or anybody wanted to change their style of living, but it has been brutally taken over by nothing more than murderers, would-be so-called warriors of some Union Army, some so-called would-be war between some General Custer some so-called war against Fairfield and all the other so-called would-be Sam Houstons that would have supposedly conquered the land, where that land never ever yielded to them any declaration of war whatsoever. We must recognize this. We all must come to be in reality of the truth. If they can find us one declaration of war, one declaration of war where any of the 5 unincorporated nations ever declared war against the United States or anyone who was coming to this free world as a visitor or a guest, then we will say they will have justified their reason for the crimes of which they have committed here. But we already are well aware. We are investigatively totally straight on our facts that there are no declarations of war to be found, not on this planet or any other planet, whereby the 5 unincorporated nations or the natives of this land have ever declared war against any nation. Whereby for America to claim that it won a war or that it declared itself to be some conqueror in a war, whereby it was never declared against it. And it only itself can proclaim now the truth that it was an illegal invasion of a group of people against 5 nations. And they now must be held accountable. They will be held accountable because all of the other 198 nations are not concerned about some so-called invasion in Russia or Ukraine. They're not concerned about some so-called would-be invasion right now of even South Korea and North Korea. But they are very much concerned about the invasion that happened in the United States of America in the 1800s. And they need someone to step forward to be held accountable for those crimes that they committed against the humans that were in that land. Because that was a gross violation of human rights. And then to find yourself placing those people in nothing more than ankle shackles, neck shackles, chains, and then placing them on nothing more than boats, ships, where you took them out into the Atlantic, sinking the ships only to pretend that you were bringing them from Africa and the ships supposedly subsided or it was taken over by the waters, when everyone knows for a fact now through investigation that those men and those women were the true Native American black people that were on the lands of the United States of America now, so they claim it to be. And they were taken out on ships in chains, and only to find themselves being bombarded by some so-called would-be Union Army or any other type of army, some so-called Marine Army that blew nothing more than cannonballs through and placed holes inside of these ships and sunk those ships and then claimed that they were bringing them from Africa and they had crashed. America, where do you think and how do you think that 198 sovereign nations are going to look the other way when they have investigated and all evidence have proven to them that this is what truly occurred? And those things that you are telling and you have been telling are nothing more than lies that you now sniver and smile about and call them a little white lie when they know they are the largest white lie that one could have ever mustered up out of his mouth. And now you're going to be held accountable. And you're trying to silence me. It is the worst kind of silence in the world, because it is not going to happen. Because right now you have already found yourself under the law, and you have already been investigated. You have already been found guilty. And to try to silence me right now, I am your greatest protector, because I am still giving you the ability to be able to find some type of mercy where some of you can still be saved. Some of your fathers and some of your mothers are going to vanish to hell because they refuse to bow down to the truth of this land. But you, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that he is who he say he is, or I guarantee you that you will be living in hell with your parents. You want to think that I'm being arrogant? I tell you what, keep testing me. Keep trying to silence me by doing nothing more than interfering with some would-be technical system that you think you created. And I'm going to show you what interference is all about. Because while you're busy trying to save yourself from each other, you're going to find that the rest of the nations are eagerly to make you disappear. No threat, I promise. I've already told you, the Battle of Armageddon is on its way. It's right at your door. Right now, my advice to you is prepare for it. Don't waste your time trying to bother one individual. You better prepare yourself for about 2.5 billion soldiers, because they're waiting. And as soon as they either don't hear the word, or they don't get the word, or you try to silence the word, they're going to destroy you. And they're going to make you wish you had never tested or tried to do anything to prevent. I got work to do. It's a night like this that I just look back and I realize that we're dealing with some people that have always been cutthroat. They're always going to be cutthroat. They don't know how to be honest. They never learned how to be upfront and factual and truthful with anybody. They even told their parents lies. Couldn't make it home on time if they wanted to, because they already had made up a lie before they left home. They have never told the truth in their life, but I guarantee them, the next lie they tell, their tongues will stick to the roof of their mouth, and they will realize that it will dry out and so will the breath of life from their bodies. And they are going to find themselves standing in the octagon, fighting against the other three beasts, and thereby the old red dragon, you will die. And all the fire will be beaten up out of you, and the smoke will begin to smolder right there in your face. And I guarantee you, you're going to remember these words in which I brought to you, because these are the words of the one you know to be the only God you'll ever hear from, and this is the one you classify to be a God of doom by bringing you that which is known as the prophecy of the universe. Yes, you are that old city of Babylon. And that city of Babylon is not only falling, but it has fell. And it is since now been prepared for nothing more than a burial, and that burial is going to be an eternal burial. You'll never come back from it. You're going to be in death eternally. You ask me, is there any pain in death? Let me help you out. Sure is. For you it is. The only people that don't feel death are those who truly believe in life. And you have no respect for life. Thereby, you're going to feel death for eternal. I'm not threatening you. I'm promising you. Again, I got work to do. Don't have time for those vicious people that are fighting against each other in your so-called government to get leadership to something that has no true courtesy to even tell the people that it don't really exist. We got work to do. Outside my window, there's a candle burning out there sitting on top of a desk. It's surrounded by darkness, but I can assure you that I'm not focusing on that darkness around it, because I'm only concerned with what's on that table, and that's a candle. And the little old man that's sitting in front of that desk, we're ready to get busy. We got a conversation that we must have. So when you come creeping around, I'll be well prepared for you. And I'm going to carry you away one day in darkness with me, and there I'm going to leave you, and I will return back to the light. Because you must understand that where I am, darkness will never be able to stay. Your darkness has come. It's only for a brief moment. Because again, the sun will rise, and when the sun rises, so will the darkness have to find some place to shatter itself. Meantime, you have the darkness. My advice to you is that since you believe that you have earned it, I say you're worthy of it. I say you have earned it to a degree that you don't know how to use it effectively. But go ahead anyway. For those of my brothers and sisters who have earned it, you've worked hard. Your soul are worthy of it. You need to get you a little bit of rest. And the day will come, and you must be prepared for it. But until then, let me just say to you, peace and love, and nightfall.